Today's story has a twist that I guarantee you will not see coming. A man just moved to a new neighborhood, looking for some peace after his divorce. But the HOA president of this community had other plans. She started sending violation notices non-stop, placed a lien on his house, and eventually broke into his garage close to midnight, searching for something specific. When she got caught, she called the sheriff to report that he was trespassing on his own property. And this is where things get really interesting, because the person she called was the same person standing right in front of her. If you are new to Fallout HOA, drop a comment below and let me know where you are watching from.
I came home at 11 o'clock at night after a long shift and saw someone standing in my yard, not outside the fence. Inside, on the lawn I had mowed just yesterday morning, with a flashlight pointed directly at my garage door. I did not reach for my phone, I did not announce myself. Instead, I noted the time on my dashboard clock, shifted into reverse, and backed into the shadow of a neighbor's oak tree where my vehicle would not be visible from the street. Then I killed the engine and watched. The figure was a woman, mid-50s, moving with purpose rather than hesitation. She was not lost. She was not checking on a neighbor's house. She was examining my garage door handle, testing it, looking for a way in. I reached into my glove box and pulled out a small notepad. Force of habit. When something does not add up, you document first and react second. 3 months earlier, I had moved to Pinewood Heights. It was supposed to be a fresh start after my divorce was finalized in the spring. The house was a good deal, a 3-bedroom ranch style on a quarter-acre lot, priced about 15% below market because the previous owner needed to sell fast. I did not ask too many questions at the time. I should have. The neighborhood looked perfect on the surface. Clean sidewalks, manicured lawns, American flags on porches. The kind of place where people wave at each other from their driveways and pretend everything is fine. But there was something underneath that perfection, a tension I could not name at first, like everyone was holding their breath. The first week, I received what the HOA called a welcome package, 47 pages of rules, regulations, and fee schedules. The second week, my first violation notice arrived. The offense was leaving my trash can at the curb for more than 2 hours after the garbage truck passed. $75. I had been at work. I paid it anyway. The third week, another violation. My grass measured 3.2 inches, exceeding the maximum allowable 3 inches. I had mowed 4 days earlier, but according to the notice, a compliance officer had measured my lawn with a ruler. Another $75. By the fourth week, 3 violations totaling $225. My car had been parked in my own driveway for more than 24 consecutive hours, violating some provision about vehicle storage. I started keeping records, dates, times, photographs, and copies of every notice. The data would tell me what the notices would not. What I noticed was that my neighbors seemed nervous. They would smile and wave, but their eyes would dart toward a particular house at the end of the street, a house with a white picket fence and a sign in the front yard that said Pinewood Heights HOA Office. The woman who lived there was named Lauren Chavez. I learned her name from the signatures on my violation notices. She had been HOA president for 8 years. I had not met her in person yet, but I had seen her walking the neighborhood in the mornings, clipboard in hand, inspecting lawns and driveways like a general surveying troops. Mid-50s, always dressed impeccably, with the kind of smile that never reached her eyes. The neighbors had a nickname for her behind closed doors. I would learn it later. One evening, I knocked on the door of the house next to mine. An older woman answered, Christine Clark, 72 years old, retired school teacher. She had lived in Pinewood Heights for 15 years. When I mentioned the violation notices, her expression changed. The polite smile faded into something guarded. She glanced toward the end of the street, toward Lauren Chavez's house, then stepped outside and lowered her voice. Be careful with that one, she said. 3 families lived in your house before you. All of them sold and left within a year. Every single one started with violation notices just like yours. I asked what happened to them. She shook her head slowly. They got worn down. Fines kept piling up. Then someone would show up with an offer to buy their house, below market, but enough to get out. They all took it eventually. I thanked Christine and walked back to my house. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. A beautiful evening in a beautiful neighborhood, but the pattern was clear now. Someone was targeting homeowners, pressuring them with manufactured violations, driving them out, profiting from their departure. 3 families in the same house, all gone within a year, and now the same playbook was being run on me. I pulled out my notepad and wrote down everything Christine had told me. Names, dates, the phrase below market. Then I added a note at the bottom. Request property records for this address, 5-year history, all transactions. Tomorrow I will start pulling documents. Tonight, I needed to understand one thing. That woman on my lawn, the one with the flashlight pointed at my garage. She was not just a curious neighbor. She was looking for something specific. And whatever it was, she believed it was inside my house. 2 weeks after my conversation with Christine Clark, I came home from work and found an envelope in my mailbox that changed everything. The return address said Pinewood Heights Homeowners Association. The letter inside was titled, Notice of Lien Intent. According to this document, I owed $2,400 in accumulated fines and unpaid assessments. If I did not pay within 30 days, the HOA would file a lien against my property. I read it twice to make sure I understood correctly. Then I sat down at my kitchen table and spread out every piece of mail I had received since moving in. Every violation notice, every fee schedule, every single document with the HOA letterhead. The violations totaled $225. I had paid all of them. I had the canceled checks to prove it. Nowhere in any of these documents was there an invoice for $2,400. No itemized statement, no breakdown of charges. Just a demand for money with no explanation of where that number came from. For those who do not know, an HOA in Texas can place a lien on your home if you owe them money. That lien gives them a legal claim against your property. If you do not pay, they can potentially force the sale of your house to recover the debt. This power exists for legitimate purposes, but in the wrong hands, it becomes a weapon. Manufacture charges, inflate fines, threaten foreclosure, pressure the homeowner until they sell at whatever price makes the problem go away. The previous 3 families who lived in my house had all sold within a year. Now I understand why. The next morning, I drove to the HOA office at the end of the street, Lauren Chavez's personal residence, with a small addition that served as a community headquarters. A sign by the door listed office hours as Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, by appointment only. I knocked anyway. The door opened after 30 seconds. Lauren Chavez stood in the doorway, dressed in a cream-colored blouse and navy slacks, reading glasses perched on top of her head, shorter than I expected, maybe 5'4", but she carried herself like someone used to looking down at people, regardless of height. Her smile was immediate and practiced. "Mr. Stewart," she said, as if we were old friends. "I was wondering when you would stop by. Please, come in." The office was small but meticulously organized. Framed certificates on the walls, a large desk with neat stacks of folders, a filing cabinet in the corner with a combination lock. Lauren gestured toward a chair across from her desk and sat down, folding her hands like a therapist preparing to deliver difficult news. "I assume you are here about the notice of lien intent," she said before I could speak. "I understand it can be alarming, but I want to assure you, everything is properly documented." I placed my copy of the notice on her desk. "I have paid every violation fine I received. The total was $226. This notice claims I owe $2,400. I need to see an itemized statement showing how that number was calculated." Lauren nodded slowly, her expression shifting into something resembling sympathy. "Mr. Stewart, the invoices were sent to your registered address, all of them. If you did not receive them, that is unfortunately an issue with postal delivery, not with our office. I asked to see proof of mailing, certified mail receipts, delivery confirmations, anything showing the invoices had actually been sent." Her smile tightened, just a fraction, the kind of micro-expression most people would miss. "Those are internal records. Mr. Stewart, I am not authorized to share them without a formal request." I kept my voice level. "Under Texas Property Code Section 209. I have the right to access all records related to my account. That includes any documents supporting these charges. For the first time since I walked in, Lauren paused. Her fingers, which had been resting calmly on the desk, pressed down slightly against the wood. Then the practiced smile returned, but it took half a second longer than before. You are certainly welcome to submit a written request. We will respond within 30 business days, as required by our bylaws. She stood up, signaling that the meeting was over. I do hope you will consider resolving this matter before it escalates further. Mr. Stewart, liens can be very complicated. The pause before that last word was deliberate, a warning dressed up as concern. I had heard that tone before, in interrogation rooms, from people who thought that they were smarter than the system they were trying to manipulate. I thanked her for her time and walked out. The conversation had lasted less than 10 minutes. In that time, she had claimed invoices were mailed but refused to provide evidence. She cited postal problems while asserting her records were complete. She referenced bylaws that contradicted the state property code I had quoted. 3 contradictions, 3 lies, and 1 tell I would not forget. When I mentioned the specific statute number, her fingers had pressed against that desk like she was bracing for impact. She had not expected anyone to know the law. She had not expected pushback. That moment of hesitation told me everything I needed to know about how this operation worked. Pressure, confusion, and the assumption that nobody would fight back. I walked back to my house and went straight to my home office. I pulled up the county clerk's website and began searching property records for my address. Every transaction for the past 5 years. Then I expanded the search to include the entire block. If Lauren Chavez had done this to 3 families before me, there would be a paper trail. There was always a paper trail, and I was going to find it. I submitted my written request for records the same day I met with Lauren Chavez. Certified mail, return receipt requested, with a copy kept in my files. Texas Property Code required the HOA to respond within 30 business days. 2 weeks passed, no response. What I did receive was a dramatic increase in violation notices. 3 per week now, sometimes 4. The infractions became increasingly absurd. My curtains were not consistent with community aesthetic guidelines. A potted plant on my front porch was classified as an unauthorized landscaping modification. Each violation carried a $75 fine. Each notice was signed by Lauren Chavez. Each one arrived with the same polite reminder that unpaid fines would be added to my account balance and could result in further action. I documented everything. Photographs with timestamps. Measurements showed my grass was exactly 2.8 inches. I recorded the dates and times when the compliance officer allegedly observed these violations, on 3 separate occasions. The inspection times listed on the notices coincided with hours when I was home, and no one had come to my property. The violations were being fabricated. I knew it. Lauren Chavez knew I knew it, and she did not care, because she believed the outcome was already determined. Pile enough fines on a homeowner, threaten their property, and eventually they break. I visited Christine Clark again on a Saturday morning. She was working in her garden when I approached, pulling weeds from around a row of tomato plants. We made small talk for a few minutes before I asked her directly about the 3 families who had lived in my house before me. Christine set down her gardening gloves and wiped her hands on her apron. The Hendersons were first, she said quietly. Nice couple, 2 kids. They lasted about 8 months before the violations got to be too much. Then the Nguyens. They tried to fight it, hired a lawyer even, but the legal fees added up faster than the fines. The last family, the Porters, were only here for 6 months. She paused. 3 families, Mr. Stewart, same house, same pattern. I asked who bought the properties. Christine glanced toward the end of the street where Lauren Chavez's house sat like a watchtower. A company called Benson Development. Every time someone sells, they swoop in with a cash offer, below market, but fast. No inspections, no contingencies. I asked what happened after Benson bought the houses. Her expression hardened. The violations stop, like magic. Then, a few months later, the house gets resold at full market price. The Hendersons' place sold for $40,000 more than they got for it. 3 families were driven out, 3 purchases by the same developer, 3 resales at a profit, and an HOA president who controlled which properties get targeted and which ones did not. The final piece arrived 3 weeks after my meeting at the HOA office. Not a notice of lien intent this time, an actual notice of lien, filed with the county recorder. The amount had grown to $4,800. According to the document, the lien was now a matter of public record, attached to my property title. If I tried to sell or refinance, this debt would have to be settled first. And if I failed to pay within 60 days, the HOA reserved the right to initiate foreclosure proceedings. I set the notice down on my kitchen table. Beneath it was a second envelope that had arrived in the same mail delivery. The return address was Benson Development LLC. The letter inside was brief and professional. Dear Mr. Stewart, we understand you may be experiencing difficulties with your homeowners association. We specialize in helping homeowners transition out of challenging situations. We would like to offer a fair cash price for your property, with a quick closing and no inspection requirements. Please contact us at your earliest convenience to discuss. The lien gets filed, and within days, a developer appears with a convenient solution. Buy my house at a discount, make the problem will disappear, except the next owner would not have to deal with Lauren Chavez. Because once Benson Development owned the property, the violations would vanish, the house would be flipped, and the cycle would continue. I looked at both documents spread out on my table, the lien notice on the left, the purchase offer on the right. This was not harassment. This was not an overzealous HOA president with too much time on her hands. This was a machine designed to manufacture debt, create desperation, and extract homes from people who did not know how to fight back. 3 families before me had faced this same moment, this same choice. They had all chosen to run. I picked up the Benson Development letter and read it one more time. Then I folded it, placed it back in its envelope, and filed it with the rest of my documentation. The 30-day deadline for my records request had passed with no response. The lien had been filed without proper documentation. The purchase offer had arrived with suspicious timing. I had enough to start asking harder questions. But I also knew that if I moved too quickly, Lauren Chavez would find a way to cover her tracks. People who run operations like this always have a backup story. They always have paperwork that looks legitimate on the surface. The only way to dismantle it was to let her keep going until she made a mistake she could not explain away. The lien was already filed. The clock was already ticking. 60 days until foreclosure proceedings could begin. That was my window. 60 days to find out exactly how deep this went and who else was involved.
Let me stop here and ask you directly. If you were in my position right now, what would you do? You have a lien on your house for charges you never incurred. You have a developer offering to make it all go away if you just sell. You have 60 days before the HOA can start foreclosure. Do you take the money and walk away like the 3 families before you? Or do you stay and fight, knowing that the people running this have been doing it successfully for years? That was my choice, and I had already made my decision, but I want to know what you would do.
The Monday after the lien was filed, I started pulling records. County clerk's office first, property transaction histories for Pinewood Heights going back 5 years. Then the Texas Secretary of State's online database searches for corporate filings related to any development companies active in the area. This was all public information. Anyone with internet access and enough patience could find it. I spent 3 evenings after work compiling spreadsheets, cross-referencing names and dates, and addresses. The picture that emerged was more extensive than I expected. A company called Benson Development LLC had purchased 7 properties in Madison County over the past 5 years. 5 of those properties were in Pinewood Heights. All 5 had been purchased below market value. All 5 had been resold within 6 months at significantly higher prices. I also reached out to a real estate attorney named Timothy White. His name had come up in my research as someone who specialized in property disputes and HOA litigation. His office was about 45 minutes away. I drove out to meet him in person because some conversations should not happen over the phone. Timothy was a tall man in his early 60s, with wire-rimmed glasses and the calm demeanor of someone who had seen every trick in the book. I laid out my situation, the violation notices, the lien, the lack of documentation, the suspiciously timed offer from Benson Development. He listened without interrupting, occasionally making notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, he set down his pen and looked at me over the top of his glasses. "Mr. Stewart, this lien has problems." "What do you mean?" I asked. "Well, He pulled the notice of lien from the folder I had brought and pointed to several sections. Under the Texas Property Code, an HOA must provide an itemized statement of all charges before filing a lien. They must give proper notice. They must follow specific procedural requirements. I do not see evidence of any of that here. I asked what that meant in practical terms. Timothy leaned back in his chair. It means this lien may be invalid, but more than that, if they filed it knowing they had not followed proper procedures, that is not just a civil matter. Filing a fraudulent lien in Texas is a felony, Class A misdemeanor at minimum, potentially a third-degree felony depending on the amount and intent. I let that sink in. Lauren Chavez had filed a lien against my property without proper documentation. If I could prove she knew the charges were fabricated, she was not just facing a lawsuit, she was facing criminal charges. But proving intent required more than my word against hers. I needed evidence of a pattern. I needed to connect her to Benson Development in a way that could not be explained as a coincidence. Timothy added one more thing before I left. I should tell you, I have seen cases like this before. HOAs that weaponize their authority to benefit insiders. They usually have layers of protection, board members who look the other way. Sometimes local officials are brought into the arrangement. If you pursue this, be prepared for what you might find. The connection I was looking for came from the county deed records. When I pulled the transaction histories for the 5 Pinewood Heights properties purchased by Benson Development, I noticed something in the recorded documents. 3 of the deeds included a warranty provision that referenced a beneficiary interest held by something called the L. Chavez Family Trust. I searched the trust name in the county's UCC filing index and found a recorded assignment of membership interest in Benson Development LLC, dated 4 years earlier. The document was signed by Carl Benson as managing member and listed the LL Chavez Family Trust as holding a 15% ownership stake. Lauren Chavez was not just collaborating with the developer. She was a co-owner of the company that was buying the properties she helped force into sale. The scope of what she had built was now clear. She used her position as HOA president to target homeowners with manufactured violations. She piled on fines until the pressure became unbearable. Then her partner company swooped in with a convenient offer. The homeowners sold at a loss just to escape. Benson Development flipped the properties for profit, and Lauren collected her share through the family trust. It had been working for years because no one had looked closely enough to see the connections. Anyone could have found what I found. The records were public. The filings were accessible. The only thing required was patience and knowing where to look. I made 2 decisions that night. The first was to install additional security cameras around my property, not the obvious kind that mounts on the eaves. Small, concealed cameras that would capture anyone approaching my house without them knowing they were being recorded. If Lauren Chavez was going to make a move, I wanted to see it coming. The second decision was harder. I contacted the Madison County District Attorney's Office and requested a meeting. I explained that I had information about potential fraud involving an HOA and a real estate development scheme. I also explained that I was personally involved as a victim, which created a conflict. I would need to recuse myself from any official investigation. Whatever happened to Lauren Chavez would happen through proper channels, no shortcuts, no accusations of impropriety, just evidence, documentation, and the system working the way it was designed to work. The DA's office scheduled a meeting for the following week. In the meantime, I had 53 days left before the HOA could initiate foreclosure proceedings on my property. 53 days to build a case that would hold up in court. 53 days to see if Lauren Chavez would make another mistake. Based on what I had seen so far, she was confident. She had done this successfully for years. Confident people get careless. They assume the next target will fold like all the others. They do not expect anyone to push back, and they certainly do not expect their victim to be documenting every move they make, waiting for the moment when they cross a line they cannot uncross. I did not have to wait long. I am Michael Vincent, your storyteller today here on Fallout HOA. If you were Gary Stewart right now, sitting on evidence of a fraud scheme while a lien ticks down toward foreclosure, what would be your next move? Drop your answer in the comments, and stay with me, because what Lauren Chavez did next is exactly what Gary was counting on. You might be wondering why Lauren Chavez would risk so much for my property specifically. The house was nice, but not exceptional. The lot was a 1/4 acre. the same as most others in the neighborhood. The answer came from Christine Clark, my neighbor with the tomato garden and 15 years of watching Pinewood Heights change around her. She knocked on my door one evening about a week after I had installed the new cameras. Her face was serious. "Mr. Stewart, I need to show you something before the next HOA meeting." Christine led me to a small study where she had a security monitoring system set up. 4 camera feeds are displayed on the screen, covering different angles of her property and the street. "I installed these 3 years ago after my garden shed was broken into," she explained. She clicked through saved footage and pulled up a file dated 2 weeks earlier. The timestamp showed 11:47 at night. The camera captured the sidewalk in front of her house and part of my driveway. A figure walked into frame, Lauren Chavez. She crossed my lawn, approached my garage, and spent several minutes examining the door and windows. Then she left the way she came. Christine pulled up another file from a different date. Same pattern. Lauren is approaching my house after dark, testing door handles, peering through windows. I went home and checked my own footage. The new system had only been active for 5 days, but it had already captured one incident. 2 nights ago, at approximately 10:30, Lauren Chavez walked up my driveway, peered through the small window on my garage door, and tried the handle. When it did not open, she stood there for almost a minute, just looking. Then she walked away. She was not checking for violations. She was not conducting any legitimate HOA business. She was casing my house, looking for something specific, or looking for a way in. The monthly HOA meeting was scheduled for the following Thursday. I had never attended one, preferring to keep a low profile while gathering information. But now I wanted to see Lauren in her natural habitat. The meeting was held in the community clubhouse, with folding chairs arranged in rows and a table at the front for board members. About 30 residents showed up. Lauren sat in the center, flanked by her husband, Ronald, and Kevin Marsh. She called the meeting to order at exactly 7 o'clock and moved through the agenda with military precision. Residents who tried to raise concerns were cut off after 2 minutes. A woman who complained about selective enforcement was told that board decisions were final. A man who questioned the 40% dues increase was informed that if he did not like the fees, he was welcome to sell and move. Lauren delivered each response with practiced condescension. Ronald nodded along. Kevin Marsh stared at the table. I sat in the back row and took notes. Names of residents who spoke, their complaints, Lauren's responses, the body language of the board. I did not say a word. When the meeting ended, people filed out quickly, wearing the same defeated expression. They had come hoping to be heard. They left knowing nothing would change. I was walking to my truck when I heard footsteps behind me. "Mr. Stewart?" I stopped and turned. Lauren stood about 10 feet away, arms crossed. Ronald was nowhere in sight. She had waited until we were alone. "I noticed you did not say anything during the meeting. Most new residents have questions, but you just sat there taking notes." I said nothing. Let her fill the silence. She took a step closer. "I hope you are giving serious consideration to that offer from Benson Development. It really is quite generous." She paused. "I say this as someone who has seen many people come and go from this community. The ones who cooperate tend to have a much easier time. The ones who do not..." Another pause. Her smile widened slightly. "They usually do not stay very long." I kept my voice neutral. "Is that a threat? Mrs. Chavez?" She tilted her head. "Of course not. Mr. Stewart, simply an observation. I've been running this community for 8 years. I know who belongs here and who does not. Some people fit in, others create problems, and problems have a way of resolving themselves." She held my gaze for a moment longer, then turned and walked back toward the clubhouse. She did not know that my phone had been recording since the moment I heard her footsteps. Every word is saved to cloud storage with timestamp and location data. She did not know who she had just threatened, and based on the footage from Christine's cameras and my own, she was getting ready to do more than threaten. 3 nights later, my security system sent an alert to my phone at 11:22. Motion detected, front yard. I was still at the station finishing paperwork. I pulled up the live feed on my phone and watched Lauren Chavez walk up my driveway for the 3rd time that week. But this time was different. She was not just looking. She had something in her hand, a tool of some kind. She went directly to my garage side door, the one hidden from the street, and started working on the lock. I saved the footage, forwarded a copy to my secure email, and stood up from my desk. My meeting with the district attorney is scheduled for tomorrow morning. But Lauren Chavez had just moved up the timeline. She was not waiting for me to miss a payment or default on the fraudulent lien. She was going to take what she wanted directly. And whatever she was looking for in my garage, she believed it would give her the leverage to force me out for good. I grabbed my jacket and headed for the door. 43 days left on the foreclosure clock. But something told me this was going to be over much sooner than that. She was breaking into my house. Right now, on camera, most people would call the police and let someone else handle it. But I had spent 20 years learning that the best cases are built when you let people finish what they started. Lauren Chavez had threatened me. She had cased my property. And now she was committing burglary. I wanted her to find whatever she was looking for, because when she did, she would have no way to explain how she got it, and I would have everything I needed. I was halfway to my truck when my phone buzzed. Deputy Sean Baker. I answered while walking. "Sheriff, I saw you leaving in a hurry. Everything okay?" The live feed was still running on my screen. Lauren Chavez had gotten my garage side door open and was inside, flashlight beam sweeping across the space. "Sean, I need you to call it in. Anonymous tip, burglary in progress at my address. Send whoever is on patrol." There was a pause. He understood immediately. If I confronted her myself, she would claim entrapment. Every piece of evidence I had collected could be challenged as the fruit of a targeted investigation. "I will handle it," he said. "Stay where you are." I stood in that parking lot watching Lauren Chavez rifle through my garage on a 4-inch phone screen. She was methodical, opening storage bins, checking shelves, looking behind boxes. She was searching for something specific. After about 12 minutes, she stopped in front of an old filing cabinet the previous owners had left behind. She pulled open the top drawer and began going through the contents, pulling out folders and examining them one by one. Then she found something. I could not see what it was from the camera angle, but her body language changed. She stood straighter, moved faster. She tucked whatever she had found under her arm and headed for the door. 23 minutes after Sean's call, my phone rang again. The responding deputy had found Lauren Chavez exiting my garage through the side door. She claimed she was conducting an HOA compliance inspection and believed the property was vacant. When informed that security footage showed her picking the lock, she stopped talking and demanded an attorney. She was transported to the county jail and booked on charges of burglary and criminal trespass. In her possession was a folder containing documents from the previous owners, property records, correspondence with the HOA, and a handwritten ledger that appeared to track payments made to someone with the initials LC over a period of 18 months. The next morning, I met with District Attorney Robert Harmon, career prosecutor, late 50s. Known for being thorough and impatient with anything that wasted his time, I brought everything: the violation notices, the fraudulent lien documentation. The property transaction records show Benson Development's below-market purchases, the recorded deed assignments linking the C.L. Chavez Family Trust to Benson Development, the audio recording of Lauren threatening me, the arrest report from the previous night, and now, the ledger that Lauren had been so desperate to retrieve. Harmon reviewed the materials for almost an hour without speaking. When he finally looked up, his expression was unreadable. "Sheriff Stewart, how long have you been sitting on this?" 6 weeks. I told him. I wanted to make sure I had enough before bringing it forward. I understood my personal involvement created complications. I was prepared to recuse myself completely. Harmon nodded slowly. The lien fraud alone would be enough. But combined with the property transactions, the trust ownership, and now this ledger, he tapped the handwritten document. This appears to be a record of kickbacks, payments from Benson Development to Lauren Chavez, separate from whatever she receives through the trust. If this is what it looks like, we are talking about fraud, conspiracy, potentially RICO charges if we can establish the enterprise element. He asked what Lauren had been looking for in my garage. The previous owners had left in a hurry, I explained. Sold to Benson Development at a significant loss. They must have kept records of what was happening to them, records that could expose the scheme. Lauren knew those documents existed somewhere. She had been casing my house for weeks, waiting for the right moment to retrieve them. What she did not know was that she was being recorded every time she set foot on my property. Here is a detail for those paying close attention. While reviewing county records, I discovered that Carl Benson had a prior fraud conviction from 12 years ago in Harris County, 18 months served. The conviction should have disqualified him from holding a real estate license. But he had structured Benson Development so he was listed as an investor rather than a licensed agent. All transactions went through a property management company that he also controlled. He had done this before. He had just gotten smarter about hiding it. Harmon told me he would convene a grand jury within 2 weeks. Lauren Chavez would be released on bail, but informed that she was the subject of an ongoing investigation. Her assets would be flagged to prevent liquidation or transfer. Carl Benson would receive a similar notification. The HOA board of Pinewood Heights would be contacted regarding organizational liability. The machine Lauren had built over 8 years was about to be dismantled piece by piece. But Lauren Chavez was not the type to go quietly. She posted bail that afternoon. By evening, I received word through Sean that she had been making calls to her attorney, to Carl Benson, to Kevin Marsh, and to someone at the county clerk's office whose name I recognized from the deed filings. She was trying to coordinate, trying to get stories aligned, trying to figure out who had set her up and how much they knew. What she did not understand yet was that the evidence was already secured. The grand jury was already being scheduled, and the ledger she had tried so hard to retrieve was now in the DA's possession, being analyzed by forensic accountants. I drove home and parked in my driveway. The garage side door had been repaired with a new deadbolt. Christine Clark was outside watering her garden. She waved when she saw me. I waved back. 37 days remained on the fraudulent foreclosure clock, but that number no longer mattered. The lien would be voided, the scheme would be exposed, and somewhere across town, Lauren Chavez was discovering that the walls she had built around herself were not as solid as she believed. That night, my security system recorded her driving slowly past my house at 11:14. She did not stop. She did not get out. She just drove by, looked at my house for a long moment, and kept going. I saved the footage and added it to the file. She knew something had changed. She just did not know how much. And she still had no idea who I was. The grand jury was 12 days away. 12 days for Lauren to make more mistakes. 12 days for Carl Benson to decide whether loyalty to his partner was worth federal prison time. 12 days for Kevin Marsh to realize that cooperation now would look very different from cooperation after indictments were handed down. I had waited 6 weeks to get to this point. I could wait 12 more days. But I had a feeling Lauren Chavez was not going to give me that long. People like her do not sit still when they feel control slipping away. They act. They escalate. They make the kind of desperate moves that turn bad situations into catastrophic ones. I checked my cameras one more time before going to bed. All clear, motion sensors armed, cloud backup running. Whatever she tried next, I would be ready. 9 days after her arrest, Lauren Chavez showed up at my front door. It was a Saturday afternoon. I was home, which was unusual for me on weekends, but I had taken the day off to organize the documentation that would be presented to the grand jury. I heard a car door slam, checked the security feed on my phone, and watched her march up my driveway with the rigid posture of someone who had convinced herself she was still in control. I considered not answering, let her knock until she gave up, but something told me this was the moment I had been waiting for, the moment when all the pieces would finally come together. I opened the door before she could knock. She was wearing a navy blazer and pearl earrings, dressed like she was attending a board meeting rather than confronting the man whose garage she had broken into. Her expression flickered when she saw me, a brief crack in the facade, before the familiar mask of authority settled back into place. "Mr. Stewart," she said, her voice clipped and precise. "We need to talk. This has gone far enough." I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, and said nothing. Let her fill the silence. She was good at that. "I do not know what you think you are doing, but you have made a serious mistake. The charges against me are going to be dropped. My attorney has already filed a motion. And when that happens, I am going to make sure you regret ever moving into this neighborhood." I watched her face as she spoke. The tightness around her eyes, the way her fingers gripped her purse strap was like it was the only thing keeping her anchored. She was scared, terrified, actually, but she had spent so long performing with confidence that she did not know how to stop. "Mrs. Chavez," I said calmly, "you broke into my garage. You were caught on camera picking the lock. You were found in possession of documents that belong to the previous owners of this house. Documents that appear to show payments made to you over 18 months. Those charges are not going to be dropped. Her jaw tightened. I do not know what you are talking about. Those documents were planted. You set me up, and I am going to prove it. She took a step closer, finger pointed at my chest. You think you are clever, do you not? Moving in here, pretending to be just another homeowner? But I know people, Mr. Stewart. I know people in this county who can make your life very difficult. I have been running this community for 8 years. I have connections you cannot even imagine. And when I am done with you, you will wish you had taken that offer from Benson Development when you had the chance. I did not move, did not blink. Just let her keep talking. Every word was being recorded by the doorbell camera. Every threat was another exhibit for the prosecution. Then she made the move I had been waiting for. She pulled out her phone and started dialing. I am calling the sheriff right now. I am going to report you for harassment, for stalking, for whatever else I can think of. Let us see how confident you are when you are the one being investigated. I watched her put the phone to her ear, watched her expression shift to one of righteous satisfaction as the call connected. Yes, I need to speak with the sheriff immediately. This is Lauren Chavez, president of the Pinewood Heights Homeowners Association. I am at a residence where I am being threatened and harassed by a homeowner. I need someone here right now. There was a pause. I could hear the dispatcher's voice faintly through the phone, asking for the address. Lauren gave it. Then there was another pause, a longer one. I saw confusion flicker across her face. Then the dispatcher said something that made her freeze. I could not hear the exact words, but I could guess what they were. Something like, "Ma'am, that address is Sheriff Stewart's residence. Is he on scene with you?" Lauren lowered the phone slowly. Her eyes moved from my face to my chest, where my shirt had shifted slightly when I crossed my arms. The badge was visible now, clipped to my belt, partially concealed by my jacket, but unmistakable once you knew to look for it. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. "You?" She took a step backward. "You are..." I reached for the radio on my shoulder and keyed it. "Dispatch, this is Sheriff Stewart. I have a situation at my residence. The individual is Mrs. Lauren Chavez. She is currently out on bail for burglary charges. Please send a unit for documentation purposes." The dispatcher's response crackled through the speaker. "Copy that. Sheriff, unit en route." Lauren stood on my front porch, phone still in her hand, staring at me as I had just materialized out of thin air. 8 years of running Pinewood Heights like her personal kingdom. Dozens of families were pressured, threatened, and driven out. Hundreds of thousands of dollars were funneled through fraudulent schemes. And she had never once considered that one of her targets might be the person responsible for enforcing the law in Madison County. "You cannot do this," she whispered. "You cannot use your position to target me. This is an abuse of power. My attorney will..." I held up a hand. "Mrs. Chavez, I have recused myself from any official role in this investigation. The evidence was gathered through public records and personal security systems. The arrest was made by responding deputies, not by me. The grand jury was convened by the district attorney, not by the sheriff's office. Everything that is happening to you is happening because of what you did, not because of who I am." A patrol car pulled up to the curb. 2 deputies stepped out. Christine Clark was standing on her porch across the street, phone in hand, recording everything. Lauren looked around at the scene unfolding around her. The deputies are approaching. The neighbor is filming. The man she had threatened for months, standing in his doorway with a badge on his belt. For the first time since I had met her, she had nothing to say. No practiced smile. No condescending explanation. Just silence. The deputies documented the encounter. Lauren was not arrested again, but the incident would be added to her file. Violation of bail conditions by contacting a victim. Additional evidence of consciousness of guilt. Another brick in the wall is being built around her. When the deputies left, I looked at Christine across the street. She gave me a small nod. I nodded back. Then I went inside, closed the door, and waited for the grand jury to finish what Lauren Chavez had started. She called the sheriff to report that I was harassing her, on my own property, after she broke into my garage. And when dispatch responded, she heard them say my name, Sheriff Stewart. I watched her face in that moment. 8 years of believing she was untouchable, collapsing in a single second. She had built her entire operation on the assumption that nobody would fight back. Nobody would know how. She never imagined that one of her targets would be the person responsible for holding people like her accountable. The grand jury returned indictments 3 days ahead of schedule. Lauren Chavez was charged with burglary, fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, and filing fraudulent liens. Ronald Chavez was charged with conspiracy and fraud for his role as HOA treasurer, signing off on fabricated invoices and falsified account statements. Carl Benson faced the most serious charges. Federal prosecutors had taken an interest in his operation after the district attorney shared evidence of the multi-county scope of his activities. Benson was indicted on 12 counts of wire fraud, conspiracy, and RICO violations. The enterprise he had built with Lauren Chavez over the past 5 years was classified as a criminal organization designed to systematically defraud homeowners of their property. Kevin Marsh, the nervous board member who had avoided eye contact at every meeting, made the smart choice. His attorney contacted the DA's office within 48 hours of the indictments and offered full cooperation in exchange for immunity. Kevin's testimony filled in the gaps that the documents could not. He explained how Lauren recruited homeowners for the board who either owed her favors or were too intimidated to question her decisions. He detailed how violation notices were generated from a master list of fabricated infractions, selected at random to create the appearance of legitimate enforcement. He described meetings where Lauren and Carl Benson discussed which properties to target next, based on factors like elderly owners, single-income households, or anyone who seemed unlikely to fight back. My house had been selected because I was new to the area, lived alone, and worked long hours. They assumed I would be an easy mark. The trials took place over the following 8 months. Lauren Chavez was convicted on all counts and sentenced to 4 years in state prison, followed by 2 years of probation. She was permanently barred from holding any position in a homeowners association or community organization. Ronald Chavez received 2 years of probation and 500 hours of community service. He lost his job at the accounting firm where he had worked for 15 years. Carl Benson's federal trial lasted 3 weeks. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours before returning guilty verdicts on all 12 counts. He was sentenced to 6 years in federal prison. Benson Development LLC was dissolved by court order, and all company assets were seized for victim restitution. The restitution process took another 6 months to complete. Forensic accountants traced every transaction, every kickback, every dollar that had flowed through the L. Chavez Family Trust and Benson Development's accounts. 7 families had been defrauded over the 5 years. Each of them received compensation from the seized assets. 3 families chose to use that money to repurchase their former homes at the prices they had originally been forced to accept. The current owners, who had unknowingly bought properties obtained through fraud, were compensated separately. It was complicated and messy, and took far longer than anyone wanted. But in the end, the people who had been victimized received something approaching justice. The fraudulent lien on my property was voided by court order. The accumulated fines, the fabricated invoices, the entire paper trail that Lauren had constructed to justify taking my home, all of it was declared null and void. I received a formal letter from the county recorder confirming that my title was clear. I framed that letter and hung it in my home office. Not as a trophy, as a reminder. Pinewood Heights HOA was placed under court supervision for 3 years. A new board was elected, with Christine Clark serving as president. The first action of the new board was to pass a resolution requiring independent legal review of any lien before it could be filed. The second action was to establish a homeowner advocacy committee with the authority to investigate complaints about selective enforcement. The third action was to formally apologize to every family that had been driven out under Lauren Chavez's leadership. It was not enough to undo the harm. Nothing could be. But it was a start. I still live in that house. The garage side door has a better lock now. The security cameras are still running. Christine waves to me every morning when I leave for work. The neighborhood feels different from it did when I first moved in. Lighter somehow, like people can finally breathe. The tension I sensed on my first day, that undercurrent of fear that I could not name, it is gone. Not because the HOA disappeared, because the person who weaponized it is no longer there. If you have stayed with this story until the end, thank you. Lauren Chavez spent 8 years believing she was the law in Pinewood Heights. She used that belief to threaten, manipulate, and steal from people who did not know how to fight back. What brought her down was not my badge, it was documentation, public records, security cameras. The same tools are available to anyone. The system works when people use it correctly. Power only exists when the law allows it. And when someone forgets that, the system has a way of reminding them. This has been Fallout HOA. I will see you in the next one.